So here's the exhaust pipe. I'm just going with a DPF delete pipe. This one's made by MBRP, and I believe it was like 160 or 170 bucks. Came with some hardware and a exhaust, I guess, band to connect the two pieces here. Eventually I'm going to do a 5-inch turbo back system, but that'll do for now. And I kind of like the stock exhaust tip, so we're going to leave it like this for a while. Underneath the truck now, and there is the DPF, and here is an extension pipe. It's about, I don't know, a couple feet maybe. I did spray some penetrating lube on these throughout the week, like I did with the EGR, but these ones are definitely going to be a little bit more of a pain to get off. But start here. So behind the rear tire, there's this exhaust flange, and there's a bolt up here, or actually it's behind there, and then there's a bolt right here that I need to loosen. After that, this exhaust pipe right here should fall down, and then up where we already loosened up the bolts there, there's a little bit of slack on these little rubber mounts, so hopefully this should slide back towards the back of the truck, and I should be able to pop that intermediate pipe off. The other bolt for this exhaust flange is actually on the inside of the frame rail, so you're going to need an extension. And actually I'm going to drop the rear tire just to give a little bit more room here. After I got that exhaust hanger off, the exhaust kind of fell down, so be careful, you don't want it to hit you in the face. Didn't hit me, but then I wiggled it off, and as you can see, there's a lot of room for these bushings to slide, so that allows you to pop it off right here. Now hopefully I'm going to be able to pop it off right there with a hammer. Took a lot of pounding and a pry bar, but now that little intermediate pipe, I guess, is disconnected. And now if you look up under here, there's a sensor and a bunch of wiring that just all needs to be disconnected. Okay, so this is the DPF right here, and there's a mounting bracket right here, but the bolts are on the outside of the frame rail. Looks like there's only 3, so I'm going to loosen those, and this is for the rear end of the DPF. I'm going to loosen those and probably loosen the ones kind of towards the front here. So now that I've loosened these bolts, it is in fact the bracket for the exhaust hanger, so I got a jack stand to support the exhaust because this is pretty heavy and you don't want it falling on you. So towards the front of the DPF, here's the down pipe. Here's a cross member for the transmission. There's more wires to disconnect and probably a couple more hoses, but these wires are on, looks like, on the outside of the frame here, so they should be pretty easy to get rid of. And then the bolts for the bracket for the exhaust hanger are right here, I believe. So I got the bolts unscrewed from where the down pipe ends and the DPF begins. You're going to need to use a little bendy thing again to get in there. It's 13 millimeter, and at least on my truck these bolts were welded in, so you have to go through the front side right there. Once you have that rear pipe removed, the wires disconnected, and these tubes were I would imagine for the DEF fluid. Those bolts unbolted, these bolts unbolted, and then up here where the down pipe terminates and the DPF pipe starts. Once you have all that disconnected, as well as these connectors on the outside of the, I don't think you need to disconnect this one. In fact, I'm going to plug it back in because you don't need to disconnect that. You should be able to just push towards the driver's side, and these brackets should leave the holes here and fall, and you should be able to slide it back. This, I'm not going to use a jack stand because there's this cross member right here that will keep it from falling on me. But I'm going to go ahead and give it a push and see what happens. Pushing the exhaust, the DPF, towards the driver's side, it felt like it was caught up on something, and if you look down here, there's this metal ball tube thing. I have no idea what that's for, but there's another exhaust hanger and bushing, and those two bolts are actually right there, so I'm gonna have to unscrew those as well. We're in fact holding this in, so I went ahead and pushed it, and it's separated from the downpipe now. And now that that's away from the frame rail, you can see that there's more wires to disconnect here. After these are disconnected, I should be able to pull this whole assembly out the back and start putting on the delete pipe. One more sensor that I had to disconnect. Actually, two more. There was one right here, and then up on top there's this. Let's see if I can get over the top here. Yeah, so there's this right here that comes out of the top of the DPF, and I believe this might be a pressure sensor, I don't know. So I had to disconnect that. There was a little clip, a little white clip that you pull off, and then you have to stick your hand around the left side and the right side of the DPF and push these two tabs in and then pull up. And then I thought that was it, started pulling it out, and then I noticed this sensor that I just showed you right now. So okay, hopefully now we are done. Hopefully. It's looks like a temperature sensor. Goes all the way back into this wiring harness. Unbolt that. It's out now. And now for the pipe that goes from the downpipe. It has these two hangers here, so you need to get these off somehow and then bolt it back up. You have this removed from the DPF. I think the best course of action is going to be to take this and mount it onto the I guess the front part of the exhaust here. That way you don't have to try to put these on while it's hanging up there. So take all these wires that are kind of just hanging that you don't need anymore, and I'm going to zip tie them up to the frame. Place, you've got the bracket in the frame there, kind of loose. This is sitting and it's not resting on anything. You're going to want to put the bolts through the back of the downpipe flange and move this flange over, obviously, to bolt it up. The front pipe on, but this pipe is not long enough to connect to the back of the tailpipe here. You still have to use that little extender pipe, but they did not give me any bolts for that to connect this pipe to that. All the bolts that are on the DPF are welded on, so it's gonna have to run like this until I can get some bolts, and I'm not very happy with that. Got the grill on, the headlight on, everything is, I think, it's fine, so we're gonna try to start it up, see what happens. All right, let's pray. It's running. There's no check engine light. Tuner's booting. Sounds awesome. Smells good. Sounds really good. Okay, so here we are, day 2. I went and took the truck out for a test drive last night, about 8 o'clock, and this quick connect fitting, I didn't put it on properly, and this popped off when I was driving and lost a fair amount of coolant. So unfortunately, I just went to go get something to eat on the way back, which wasn't too far. I had lost a lot of coolant after I had popped the hood and realized that that popped off. So I had to fill both of these reservoirs with water. So I'm gonna have to go to the store and buy some coolant and replace the coolant in both radiators. So yeah, just make sure that that's on for sure. But I had to go to the hardware store this morning and I bought these bolts. They're 1 3/4 I believe, for the pipe here, for the part of the straight pipe to connect to here. These ones have welded on bolts, so I got, or welded on bolts, so I got some extra nuts for those, just because I think I don't think I might have lost the other ones, but anyways, they're like $1 a piece, so not a big deal. So we're gonna get to work on it. We're done. So what I did is I put the bolts in, or put the nuts on there kind of loose, put them on here kind of loose. That exhaust fan clamp, obviously you need that a little bit loose, and I started at the back, and then reattached the bolts for the rear exhaust hanger. Kind of left them a little bit loose, and then it came back up to the front, made sure everything was kind of lined up, and then started tightening, starting back there, and then started tightening those, and then finally the exhaust clamp, and if you give it a shake, it's solid. So we're done now, thank God.